Hello, welcome to my presentation to the Hoverclub of Great Britain, which I gave on March the 16th this year. I am one of the generation of hovercraft enthusiasts from the 1970s, having first attended Hover Show 66 at Browndown near Leon-Solent and half built a hovercraft at school as a project. I trained as a naval architect in Newcastle, graduating in 1970, supported as an apprentice at Vosper Thornycroft. My first year after college was on secondment to the National Physical Laboratory in Feltham. I enjoyed lots of time in the No. 3 towing tank working on fast boat testing before going back to Vosper. After completing my training, I worked on VT1002 and 3 in Malmö, Sweden for a summer as a maintenance shift supervisor. And when I got back to Porchester, I worked in the hovercraft design department, including model testing and analysis. I've built several hovercraft for myself through the 1970s, two of which you can see at the bottom of this slide, as well as the VT1 on the left-hand side and the Sea Pearl, the platform which I model tested third from the left. My career from 1976 took me into the oil and gas industry, initially projects that were based in the UK, and then in 1982 I made a move to Shell in Norway to work on the Troll field. I've remained an enthusiastic follower of the ACV industry and recreation, and in the last few years I've taken on work at the Hovercraft Society as the technical secretary. So the main subjects I will illustrate in the presentation are, as you can see on the screen, the Hovercraft Society right now, where it's come from, control, regulation and conformance, which are the boundaries around which hovercraft are designed and constructed, the industry and recreation, some samples right now, I thought about what about the future and the technology challenges which are involved in that. So let's get going. I'll take you through some text slides and then show some images and short video clips. So first of all, the Hovercraft Society. This was established in 1971, supported by the Institution of Production Engineers. It was very active in the 1970s while the industry was at a high level on the Solent with BHC and Vosper Thornycroft and so on, and Hover Marine. Interest tailed off in the 1980s to a small band of local members around the Solent for the Hovercraft Society. And then, rather a long way afterwards, in 2019, a working internet site was finally established and a regular global newsletter, which was issued electronically, as well as a YouTube channel, which we began to use to rebuild our membership. The meetings for the Hovercraft Society are primarily on Zoom due to our global membership. And our current aim is to collect the global family effectively so as to be able to move the technology forward, using technology as a common good to help improve confidence in the use of ACVs and SES, which are still a little bit on edge for the industry in general. The THS internet site contains both a library of technical papers for the student and practicing engineers reference and an archive of the regular newsletters. The library is steadily growing, and the news archive is a unique focused source of up-to-date information. control, regulation and conformance follows a number of strands. Machines such as ACVs have to conform to technical standards that can verify their safety. In the recreational level, the Hoverclub of Great Britain was a very early starter in setting regulations for craft that would race in their meetings. So looking at the range of craft and sizes that we have, if we look at the large hovercraft and SES, we, first of all, commercial craft have to conform to the International Maritime Organization high-speed craft regulations, and classification societies such as Lloyd's, DNV, American Bureau of Shipping, and the national regulations control the design of their structure and their safety in terms of stability and ability to stay afloat when damaged. Military craft take guidance from bodies such as Lloyd's Register, DNV, ABS and so on, as well as the national military specs for the particular country. For medium-sized utility hovercraft, the smaller craft can use the Hovercraft Manufacturers Association regulations, which have been designed to be simpler than those of the HSC. Commercial-sized craft do have to conform to the IMO HSC regulations and the national variations. In the USA, the Coast Guard regulations control any boat or hovercraft that's built and operated in the US. And of course, based on the Jones Act, if a craft is built for sale and operation in the US, the hull has to be built in the US. For recreational hovercraft, the leading regulations are those of the Hoverclub of Great Britain and the World Hovercraft Federation. There are the guidelines produced by the Hovercraft Cruising Club in the UK, and in addition to these above three, there are usually national regulations controlling maritime recreation, small boats, and so the maritime registry in the particular country has a part to play. So where is ACV technology right now in relation to these regulations? The IMO HSC code is now mature. It's been in place for almost 20 years, 2 decades. And classification society guidelines are mostly built upon the basis of the HSC code. Small craft generally use the HMA guidelines, which are a simplified set, and those now are reasonably mature. Recreational craft guidelines for global use tend to be built upon the documents which the HCGB generated since the 1970s, and they're very mature right now, although of course racing continues to develop and provide challenges in design. So let's look at some examples in the different size ranges. We have several key projects ongoing for large craft, such as we list below, there's the SSC project, the Ship-to-Shore Connector project for the US Navy, which may deliver as many as 80 new craft to replace the craft that are already in operation for the last 30 years. There's the new LCAC class for South Korea, which is a much smaller number, and there is some independence of design, but basically they are a modification to the US SSC. And then there are 3 new hover ferries for Oita in Japan, which have just been delivered over the last 6 months and are being prepared for operation in service right now. And in the UK, it is understood that there will be a tender for an LCAC type craft somewhat in the future with the Ministry of Defence. It's not known how many of the Royal Navy might procure, but Griffon Hoverwork hope that their Wyvern design, which they've developed over the last 6 years, will be in there with a chance. Now looking at medium-sized craft examples. Here are 2 projects at medium size. First is Griffon Hoverwork 2000, which was recently delivered for service across the St. Augustine River in Quebec, Canada, on the east coast. It joins a craft that has been working there for a number of years successfully, especially in the ice breakup season. Below is the amphibious Marine Explorer, 2 of which were delivered for service as personnel commuter water taxis in Texas across the river to the SpaceX facility there. So moving further down from the 12 to 25 seat capacity, we have the small utility craft. Here are a couple of projects in the small utility size. First of all, Neoteric in Indiana have a significant clientele from police, fire departments and other rescue services in the US, right across the US, and in fact across the world. They've delivered to 50 nations worldwide, as well as to the US Border Control, Homeland Security, National Parks and the local police and fire and emergency services in a number of communities. In addition to that, you can see to the right the BHC 700 from British Hovercraft Company in the southeast of the UK, and these have now been delivered to a mining site in Chile, or rather one has, and that works now with a smaller open BHC craft for logistics across a lake by this mine in Chile. On the next slide, we have the Evenoff IH3 from Sweden, which has also been delivered to various rescue and fire services in Europe. So it's just 2 views of the craft. This craft has a comfortably deep cushion, or at least that's my feel for it. There's plenty of space for 3 people, high sides to the cockpit, which also fit with rescue type operations. And this may be contrasted with the rather low profile of racing craft. I shall show you an example in the next slide. So moving on from utility and commercial applications, hovercraft recreation is managed by a number of organisations. Here's a view, both words and pictures, of a number of them, perhaps the most active organisations globally. So we have the Hovercraft Club of Great Britain, the World Hovercraft Federation, and the European Hovercraft Federation, all of which are focused on circuit racing. The Hovercraft Cruising Club, the Hoverclub of America, and the Hovercraft Association of Australia are generally more focused on cruising events, get-togethers and trips out along rivers and on lakes and so on, rather than out-and-out circuit racing. And then we have the FFA in France, Fédération, the FFA, which hosts a week-long river trek along the Rhône each year. It's the Fédération Française des Aéroglisseurs. That's what it is. Then, in addition to that, there are many other national and regional hover clubs and associations. In September 2022, I visited Flotsbro near Stockholm for the World Hovercraft Championships. This is held generally once every 4 years. It had been put back by a year due to the problems we had with COVID. But it was a very interesting and engaging weekend of racing. The course was intentionally winding, both over water and over the land part of the course, apart from one main water straight. So the craft were kept most of their time going sideways around corners, as you can get a little bit of a view of on the top picture here. The question is, how might this type of circuit racing affect design? So here's a sample craft, which is actually from France, and it has a number of features which are typical of racing craft at the moment. So we have a tapered bow, which helps keep the bow pointed inwards on turns, especially when the craft is banked, and the craft often are banked quite a lot. The fan flow detectors, top right, are an attempt to stave off fan stall also when drifting sideways, which is not very helpful if you're trying to use your thrust to keep control of where you're going. And then we have a large ducted fan and a water-cooled engine for maximizing the thrust. And right now, most of the racing craft have covers over the lift engines, if indeed there is a lift engine as there is here. Otherwise, there's a splitter plate in the duct at the back which deflects air into the cushion. And while these craft have to be buoyant, they have a very low freeboard, which means that in an incident the cockpit may fill with water and the pilot will most likely end up in the water rather than staying in the craft. Rescue is always on hand very close by, and medical teams. So it's a limited requirement just to keep the craft buoyant and have medical rescue facilities very close by, like any circuit racing competition. But going back to the bigger picture, what might the future look like for ACVs? So what about the future? Well, for right now, we're looking at an energy transition for all of transport and motorised sporting. Formula One has as an alternative the Formula Electric, which is beginning to develop very fast now. And this technology for the energy transition is driving several developments in both large and small craft for commercial and in recreational developments. And particularly the large commercial SES are going forward rather quickly. Large SES and ACV developments are driven by market demands for battery-powered SES ferries for up to 80 kilometre routes in Norway. Also either battery or fuel cell SES ferries for up to 160 kilometre long routes, which are also along the coast in Norway. There's a big pressure on operators now to move from diesel power to electric power for these coastal ferries, coastal fast ferries. And then we have the possibility of sustainable liquid fuels for large commercial, paramilitary and military craft, such as the amphibious ACVs. Recreational craft are moving towards electric lift. There are a few examples already that operate electric lift, not for racing, but for cruising. And prototypes for fully electric craft are just being tested at the moment, at least for the kind of cruising type recreation. So for a fully electric craft, a recreational one, then maybe in the next couple of years it'll be possible to have some kind of competition with an endurance of an hour or so, if the batteries can have an endurance of 2 hours perhaps. But circuit racing is probably not going to happen for another 5 years or so, I would guess. The work on the large SES for the ferries, the battery craft are ready for tender now, technically, but just now they've hit a bit of a bump in the road due to the recent increases in prices following COVID, and hydrogen SES, whilst they've been submitted for technical approval, they also have a way to go before they could be tendered for practical service. Whilst Norway is in the front in these developments, other countries are focusing more on catamarans at the moment, but they shouldn't be far behind on the SES front. For the smaller craft, one of the issues is regulation, and there are a number of people at the moment working on prospective electrical craft regulations, both for the HCGB and there are some draft regulations in the World Hovercraft Federation already. So finally, what does this lead to as a technical challenge at present? In my view, the two main areas are powering and air cushion design. The powering challenges, as you see here, first of all, there's the SES zero emission technology, which currently parallels that of catamaran ferries in other countries than Norway. But as I mentioned, the bumps in the road are a bit like with cars, the charging network and finance. In other words, the cost of the vessels, the first cost of the vessels rather than the operating cost. Once the network is in place, the operating cost actually, rather like electric cars, is less than the diesel equivalent, or should be, let's say, because they're not in service at the moment. But the next 5 years, we hope we will see the transition become effective, and then we'll start seeing these ferries in operation. Many applications currently employing hovercraft for a quick transition really need a green diesel or methanol and a modification to their reciprocating engines, rather than going for the hydrogen or battery power, which are hydrogen is a safety issue if you store lots of it, and the battery, of course, is a weight issue, which is not very good for ACVs. Hover Travel, though, are studying hydrogen fuel cell powering, and it might just work for their route, which is a 10-minute route across to Ryde in the Isle of Wight. So rather than having 1 hour or so, which is typical in Norway for the SES ferries, 10 or 15 minutes, and then you're where you can get more hydrogen. So that may just work. Then the other area, after the powering, is the air cushion itself. And I believe that we still have a lot to learn about the physics of flow around skirts and about the dynamic stability of ACVs in particular. SES are a little bit simpler, but the combination of the geometric form of the side holes and the skirts still, I believe, have opportunities for technical development. And of course, now we have computer-aided fluid dynamics, which is able to model these multi-physics flows, as they call them. So air, water, and spray, and that is able to help us as we go forward, rather than going straight into a towing tank. Some craft, like the C2 shore connector, still have intensive maintenance, and if we can improve the cushion and skirt design, it's maybe that we could come to a better solution, as I've said here, but an improvement, particularly for maintenance and the cost of operation, really. And in that sense, maybe Griffon Hoverworks Wyvern might well show the way, in the sense that its cushion and skirt system is developed from the original HDL experience of years ago. And I have a great deal of confidence in their design. So here are an image and 4 videos for you. To close out, here is a photo on the next slide showing a utility hovercraft in its element. And after that, there are 4 slides which I shall show with 4 videos. They're pictures of the videos, 2 from Oita and 2 showing the Japanese LCAC operations in January. To view the videos shown in the 4 slides, please will you click on the links which will be given in the descriptive text attached to this YouTube video. I hope you find them interesting. Here's a photo of a South Korean Griffon Hoverwork 8000. It's a very good photo of a practical, reliable craft skimming along between the ocean and the sand. That's now been in service for over 20 years with the South Korean National Maritime Police Agency. And similar craft are in service with the Indian Coast Guard and the Saudi Arabian Border Guard, amongst others. So this is the first video of the Oita craft in a question and answer session from Griffon Hoverwork. As you'll see in the video, all 3 craft are now on site, and there are, the videos show both terminals and the maintenance boat yard, as they call it. So it's a very interesting 2 videos, so do click on the links in the YouTube description. This is the second video of the Oita craft, which was prepared by Explore Oita Japan, a local tourist office aimed at visitors to the area, encouraging them to use the craft going across Beppu Bay. This is the first video I have for you, which shows the LCAC craft of the Japanese Navy coming out of the mothership, going to shore, carrying in this case 2 large excavators to help with rescue services from the earthquake which struck Japan in January. And there's a second video with a rather more exciting commentary on it if you click on that. So there are the two links in the YouTube descriptive text. So this is the second video showing the Japanese LCAC craft in operation and delivering the excavators ashore. It's a bit of a different viewpoint shown, but it is some very good video, and obviously the LCACs were very helpful in supporting the relief operation in January. Well, thank you very much for listening. I hope it's been an interesting presentation, and look forward to your visiting the Hovercraft Society site, internet site, sometime in the future. Thank you very much.